Well, I finally hit the bottom. I don't know where this is exactly, but there's a Nintendo here, so what the hey. Let's keep knocking out NES games. The next two games we are going to look at are movie-based games. It's no secret that movie-based games can be hit or miss when it comes to adaptation on the NES. Oftentimes more miss than hit, but not always. This is also true of other adaptations based on TV shows or comic book characters and whatnot. I hope to go through all these games and be resurrected, so you'll be able to see all the major offenders along the way, but if you look back on the first 10 episodes of this show, you'll see what I mean. Anyway, first up is Last Action Hero. Let's get this one going. Who is this guy? I know I shouldn't expect much from NES graphics, but he kinda looks like George Washington tried to do a fusion dance with... oh, never mind. So you play as this guy walking down the street and dealing property damage to police cars while cops shoot at you and Michael McDonald clones attack you. I'm sure it's not really Michael McDonald, but until we get some more context, it's what this fool believes. It's a classic NES control scheme. One button jumps and the other button attacks. At the end of the level is whoever this guy is. I'm punching him. I'm pretty sure he has a gun. We beat him, and George tells us he's taking the boy. Okay. Taking him where exactly? And now we are on the roof with a bunch of kids huddled off to the side? What is happening? He's a bad guy, so I guess I'll just punch him until he explodes into pink glitter. Now who is this kid? Out of focus? What? Take this ticket? Who is this creep? Sleeping? How are you sleeping when you're being kidnapped? Okay, time to come clean. I've seen the movie, so I understand what is happening in the game as it pertains to the movie. But for anyone who has never seen the movie and just randomly picks up this game, they're going to be a bit confused. So let's back up a bit. Last Action Hero is a comedy action film from 1993 starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and some kid and some other people, and then there's a bunch of cameos, but whatever. The premise of the movie is Danny, a young action movie enthusiast, inadvertently uses an enchanted movie ticket to actually go into a Jack Slater movie. So, within the movie Last Action Hero, there is a franchise of action films named Jack Slater, starring their respective titular character. So it's a movie inside of a movie. Movieception? Okay, I promise not to make any more Inception jokes. Jack Slater is played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, both in real life and in the setting of Last Action Hero. Overall, Last Action Hero and the Jack Slater character and films within the Last Action Hero universe, if you will, manages to be an action film and comedy film while parodying itself, action films in general, and to an extent Schwarzenegger himself. Later in the film, Schwarzenegger actually plays as himself and meets Jack Slater, commenting that Slater would make an awesome stunt double. To explain all the little nuances would spoil the movie, but two of my favorite parts include the police chief, who is the typical overstressed, angry 80s police chief guy who can barely keep his best detective from ruining the city. In one scene, he ridiculously assigned Slater to team up with Danny, who is stuck in the movie because, hey, in 80s movies, poorly matched characters have to become cop buddies, right? Later in the movie, the police chief is enraged in a rant, and smoke actually rises from his ears. The hilarity of the film, mixed with that classic Schwarzenegger swag, makes up for the cringe of the Danny character. So I've talked about the movie too much, but how does this relate to the game? In the game, the initial scene involves the presumed antagonist from Jack Slater 3, known as the Ripper. In the movie, he's a truly creepy dude, but the NES adaptation of him looks really weird. The first level of the game has Slater fighting all sorts of dudes up the street. However, in the movie, Slater kinda just walks up to the building after walking all over police cars. Last Action Hero opens with this scene, so you're not fully aware that you're watching a movie within the movie quite yet. When Slater makes it up to the roof, he has a standoff with the Ripper. Several children are huddled off to the side, so the game managed to get that right, and the boy Ripper refers to is actually Slater's son, not Danny. In the film, the Ripper falls off the building, but in the NES game, Slater punches him a bunch until he explodes into pink fluffy stuff. The next NES cutscene is a kid complaining about a movie being out of focus. The previous cutscenes had the images in movie film, so I guess that's how the developers were trying to convey that the scene was in a movie. But the level and fight with the Ripper weren't outlined in movie film. In Last Action Hero, this final scene of Jack Slater 3 goes out of focus while Danny watches in an empty movie theater. The guy who runs the theater, Nick, gives Danny a movie ticket to come back and watch Jack Slater 4. In the NES game, they simply portray this by showing a weird creepy dude instead of a nice jovial theater operator such as the one in the movie. The ticket part is a bit messed up here. In the NES game, Nick gives Danny the ticket now, but in the movie, Nick gives Danny the ticket later when Danny comes back at midnight to watch a private viewing of the new Jack Slater movie, Jack Slater 4. So there's a little bit of a continuity issue here, but not that big of a deal, I guess. The next NES scene shows Danny falling asleep while in class, and he has a different idea about how Hamlet should be. So wait, he's in class at the movie theaters, gets mad about the film going out of focus, and falls asleep thinking about Shakespeare? No, what the game doesn't explain is that Danny was skipping school, and when he makes it into school later, his class is watching a film adaptation of Hamlet. So it's another film within the film. In Last Action Hero, it isn't clear that Danny has fallen asleep, but the Hamlet scenes are suddenly way more 80s awesome with Jack Slater showing up. Obviously, this isn't real. It's in Danny's head, but he could have been daydreaming. He wasn't necessarily asleep. Either way, it really isn't all that important of a scene other than to further establish Danny as being a fan of action films and Jack Slater, and also maybe somewhat obsessed with Jack Slater, and a delinquent for skipping school. But one thing I did not expect was for this daydream to be included in the NES game, and it looks nothing like the scene in the movie. It's as if the developers didn't watch the movie and asked a distracted 6-year-old, "Hey kid, what happened in the movie?" And this scene got added in for some reason. There are several other non-essential scenes in the movie that would have made better levels than this. But I get to the top floor of this dream castle, or is it a dream theater, and punch this dude who is to be or not to be— oh wait, the game beat me to the terrible joke. But at least they got it right with Polonius. This might be a weird time to do this, but I gotta plug Hamlet for just a second. Shakespeare in general wrote some amazing stories. Technically plays, but think of them as stories and have at it. Next up in Danny's dream, Slater walks into the first level of Ghosts and Goblins. Definitely some wicked dreams. Then dynamite flies out of the screen. This is accurate with regard to the movie. While Danny is watching Jack Slater 4 back at the movie theater, the dynamite lands in one of the aisles. What the game forgot to mention is everything between Danny being at school and then being back at the movie theater. Most importantly, the history of the ticket he was given earlier. The game also glosses over a huge amount of plot points from the movie. In the cutscene here, it talks about Whitney. Who is Whitney, you ask? She's a character in Jack Slater 4, but that wasn't explained at all in the game. I would say this is forgivable, but the game designers went out of their way to give us a Hamlet level when they could have given us a really cool driving level that would have fit into the story from the movie very well. This next level takes place in this house, which does come from the Jack Slater 4 film within Last Action Hero, but it just has you hairpin left and right up several floors. I don't recall the house being several stories tall in the movie, but I guess they had to do something. It wouldn't be so bad, except I already did something like this in Hamlet. You can kind of cheese this level. If you manage to get past the on-screen bad guys and keep advancing, they will follow you. As long as both guys stay on screen, the game won't load in a new person in front of you. It's kind of cheap, but I can't figure out how to do a kick, and supposedly the kick is the stronger attack option. Anyway, there's a boss guy, and in the game talks about Benedict. In the movie, Benedict is the quintessential 90s bad guy. He's super skilled and has a glass eye with weird designs. The game hasn't mentioned it yet, and maybe they won't, but Benedict's character starts out as a hitman for a crime thug named Vivaldi. I like the name choice for this character because Vivaldi wrote The Four Seasons, but we're kind of getting off track. Back to the game. And according to the cutscene, we are hitting the highway, so maybe we will get an overdue driving stage. Never mind. We're walking on other people's cars again, and we are being attacked by the robot police guy from Futurama, while citizens practice their discus skills. This sorta references a scene from the movie, I guess, But then I beat up some bad guy at the end of the level, and the next cutscene talks about everyone paying their respects to Leo, but a bomb is going to blow. Again, without seeing the movie, all you can wonder is, who is Leo and what bomb? From what I recall, Leo and Vivaldi were sort of competitors. Vivaldi concocts a plan to blow up Leo's body at Leo's funeral. As I remember it, this could have been an awesome video game level, but instead we are once again hairpinning our way left and right up multiple floors. Urgh. I will say the crane and the outside elevator thing are in the movie, so at least they got that, but come on. This is a disgrace to the movie. This building is supposed to be a hotel, so I doubt the inside resembled an office building with a plethora of filing cabinets and no chairs. Is Mega Man going to be at the top of the building when we get up there? I do have to say, I am digging the song for this level though. At the end of the level, it talks about how Leo's body is hanging from the crane. If you care to watch the movie, you can see the ensuing hilarity which makes this possible. So then there's this part with the helicopter. I will give them credit, yes, there is a helicopter scene in this part of the movie and it's pretty awesome, but no, the scene did not involve Jack Slater just punching people as they jump from the helicopter. I am digging that music again though.
I am Arnold and I am inside this game. People drop down and they all look the same. I punch them real hard and they fly out the screen. Hey, where is the crane? It should be in the scene. Later or sooner, I want blueberry cobbler. I don't have a tumor, now get to the chopper.
Now here is a scene they got right with regard to the movie. Slater and the dead guy fall into the tar pits. Fine. But then they really mess things up with this next scene that says Death gets up from his chess game and walks into the cinema. In the movie, the character Death is played by none other than Ian McKellen. That, in and of itself, is awesome, but I gotta back up for this to make more sense. Again, without giving too much away, the game fails to explain that Benedict got a hold of Danny's enchanted ticket and left the Jack Slater film and went into Danny's world, or the real world. And Danny and Slater go after him, also returning into the real world. Last Action Hero has some fun with this since now there are two Schwarzeneggers who will eventually meet. Also, Maria Shriver is there. The meeting takes place at the movie premiere for Jack Slater 4 when Jack Slater is chasing after the Ripper. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that Benedict used the enchanted ticket to bring the Ripper into the real world from Jack Slater 3. According to the game, Slater, in the real world, has to get by the police in order to make it to the movie premiere for Jack Slater 4. But if this were true, they should be mistaking him for Arnold and begging for an autograph. Also, according to the game, Slater fights Ian Death McKellen outside the movie theater. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, that doesn't happen in Last Action Hero. The cutscene then states that the Ripper is spotted in the movie theater. This is correct with the film, however, in the film everyone thinks it's just a stunt being played for the movie premiere. The game then takes you through the movie theater, presumably to go after the Ripper. In the movie, this entire chain of events is actually very interesting, as there are plenty of cameos of people playing themselves. I don't want to ruin the surprise, so I won't say anything else. But look at the movie screen. It makes it look like the movie premiere is for Last Action Hero, the movie and game we are reviewing right now. The movie within the movie is supposed to be Jack Slater 4, the same film that Danny went into earlier in Last Action Hero. And if Slater is in the real world at this time, it makes me wonder what would show up on the movie screen. Anyway, get through the level, and the next cutscene is the Ripper challenging Slater to a showdown on the roof, just like Jack Slater 3 and the opening scene of the Last Action Hero movie. The showdown itself is pretty uneventful. I feel like I've fought this guy already. Because I have. At the beginning of the game. Beat the Ripper, and it phones in the rest of the story by stating that Slater went back into the film Jack Slater 4. And then the game credits are just kind of thrown up there. Again, I am not trying to spoil the film, so I'll just say this. The way in which the Ripper is taken out in the movie is not by punching him like in the game, and the Ripper isn't even the final bad guy showdown in the movie. I only mention this to call back to Death McKellen. You know, hey, that sounds like a cool Irish metal band. Yeah. Oh wait, where was I? Oh yeah. The character of Death does not make his or its way into the real world from an entirely different film until after this point in the movie, meaning the fight with Death outside the movie theater was wholly inaccurate. I can forgive the majority of this game's adaptation outside of this part. Some might argue the game developers needed to put a boss fight right here and needed a character. However, previous levels have had nobody bosses that didn't tie into the movie at all. Not only does Slater not fight Death in the movie, but without Death saying the right thing at the right time to Danny, it's possible Slater might not have made it out of the real world and back into Jack Slater 4. Anyway, this game review turned into a game and movie review. The game itself is a bit confusing as far as the story goes, and the gameplay itself is mediocre enough that the story needs to be good to make up for it. In order for the story to make sense, it helps to have seen and remembered the movie, but if you've seen and remembered the movie, then you're likely to be unsatisfied with the way the game adapted that movie. But while I can't really recommend the game, I can recommend the movie. It's definitely worth the rental fee and your time. Speaking of game adaptations of movies, we've had 4 appear on this show other than adaptations from the Big D. I thought it might be cool to keep track of which starring actors have had their own games as we go along. So far we have had 1 each for Harrison Ford, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and technically Mike Myers. Between Last Crusade, Cliffhanger, Wayne's World, and Last Action Hero, I would have to say Wayne's World is probably my personal favorite of those 4 choices, with Last Crusade just barely behind. Of the game adaptations, I hope to never have to play any of them ever again, but I think Cliffhanger and Ubisoft's Last Crusade were the lesser pair. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'll see you all next time when we cover yet another movie-based game. Take care.